Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Look, I know the cheesecake is, people are very concerned, Thomas. They're thinking that the conclave is maybe getting too many sweets. So what I did is I grilled up some Mar-a-Lago turkey burgers.
Oh, I love those.
Aren't they delicious?
That's our best recipe. I think someone very regal, very royal must have come up with that recipe.
Yeah, well, whatever. They're hot. They're off the grill. So when we're finished up, you can have them. And for those of you who've never tried them, I've got the recipe. All you need to do is open up that link in the description box. But today we're so excited because we've had a whole day to watch the mainstream media, including Fox News, Drudge, all the ones that you think are on your side. We've had a day to watch them respond to the summit. And Thomas, what do you have to report to us?
Oh my gosh, where do we even start, Betsy? Where do we even start?
Well, I know where I want to end. I want to talk about, let's not forget, I want to talk about Dan Coats.
Yes,
okay.
That's easy. We're down in the conclaves rolling around on the floor with laughter because basically Putin cut off Robert Mueller's head and put it in a basket and served it up to Trump. It was so beautiful. And we warned him the longer he continues at this, he, the inquisitor, will end up being the witch on trial. And this is what just happened. Now, you got everybody exploding. And who's exploding the most? The people connected to the FISA warrant, fraudulent conspiracy, abuse, and the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence operation against Trump. Those are the people freaking out. Adam Schiff, Warren from the Senate Committee, Richard Burr from the Senate Committee, Intelligence Committee. You see, that committee, they were in January of 2016, they were the first ones to get on board to get the Trump dossier. Now, they said, show me some evidence. That's what Putin has always said. Show me some evidence about this Russian meddling. And basically, in the end, Trump got in trouble because if he would have added one more word, he might not got in quite as much trouble. But no matter what he did, he was going to get in trouble.
Well, let's be clear. He got in trouble, quote unquote, with the fake media.
Correct.
Not with us patriots.
No.
We know what he's doing. We're behind him.
That was a historically good event. They think it's a historically bad event. So what was he really doing? He basically, as you saw in his tweet, spelled the word my intelligence with capital I, M, capital Y. That's different than the intelligence community ran by Dan Coats. Because just a few days ago, they were testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee that the entire intelligence community, including Pompeo, was there. Christopher Wray was there. Dan Coats was there. And they were all testifying. And that's when I realized how the SES members in Dan Coates' office have basically kept him in check. He hasn't been able to move forward. He had to align himself with the report that cost millions and millions of dollars. The joint report on Russian meddling in the election, which instead of stopping the supposed meddling, which there really wasn't any, which is some ads on Facebook and some spear phishing, which didn't get anywhere. Not one vote was changed according to any of them, Clapper included. And Clapper said he didn't even agree with that report that was turned in. Now, they're all very crazy, upset. Their heads are exploding. They're setting themselves on fire. And it's beautiful. And what you do is whoever is screaming the loudest, okay, let's say, who's that? John Brennan? And what did he say about Trump? It's treason, high crimes, and misdemeanor. Well, that's exactly who you are, John. Yes, you did commit treason. Yes, you did commit high crimes and misdemeanors. But they're actually, as I pointed out yesterday, felonies. And then who's screaming next loudest? What could you say? You could say the next loudest would be Comey. And Comey is saying basically who he is. And when you look at what any of them are saying, Adam Schiff or Schumer or the mainstream media, any of them, what are they saying? They're not saying what they always say, which is usually the same exact talking point. They're all freaking out, saying whatever comes to the top of their mind, which is nothing more than projection of their own evils upon Donald Trump and this meeting with Putin. And so we suggest that the Avid, which is the prompting machine that gives them the words to say, because none of them are journalists, none of them do any research whatsoever. They simply read what is put up on the screen by a company called Avid, ISIS Management, which is ran by Sir Lord Malek, who we'll be talking about soon. But anyway, I think what was put up on their prompter was attack Trump, go crazy, in your own words.
Well, they all did a good job.
I mean,
that was their objective.
They pulled out everything they could say. They begged the deep state to step forward and take over. They asked the military to commit a coup. They said, we have to have a coup. We have to have impeachment. Oh my Lord, anything. But Trump predicted that would happen. We predicted it would happen. And we laughed about what might have happened, which did happen. Putin put Robert Mueller's head in a basket. It was so beautiful. We can talk more about that.
Well, I want to, we've had a few tweets since you came in, and I didn't give them to you beforehand to look at because I want to test you and see how good you are and how sharp you are. Okay? So here is the first one. I had a great meeting with NATO. They have paid $33 billion more and will pay hundreds of billions of dollars more in the future, only because of me. NATO was weak, and now it is so strong again, bad for Russia. The media only says I was rude to leaders, never mentions the money.
After winning the World Series, the World Cup, the Super Bowl, and every other game with his NATO moves, in other words, after becoming the best winner that we've had coming out of America since the beginning of wars in America, 1776, we have the best winner here. And what he's basically saying is he went into the strongest position he could with Putin by having NATO on his side. Now, what I notice here is a tiny discrepancy. 34, 33, looks like of the 34 billion promised, 33 came through already. That means $1 more billion in the money that they promised him in the morning. And the other 266 billion will be coming along nicely. Thank you very much. And it showed the stance that he had in a united stance with NATO after telling them, basically insinuating he was going to close them down because they didn't pay their bills. They weren't buying any weapons. We were defending them, and they were stabbing us in the back with trade and everything else. Politics, with migration, with lack of support.
I still don't understand why we have NATO. Russia is not our enemy, and I just don't understand. I think it's just a way to feed this military-industrial complex and these bankster globalists with money. And, you know, at some point we need to move through that facade and get real with what we're doing here.
NATO is the foundation of the Cold War. The Cold War is kept in place by the Atlantic Council's propaganda, which now has taken over fact-checking in Europe and controlling what goes on to the internet and on news. And so the Atlantic Council and NATO must keep up their attacks against Russia, and they literally create the propaganda. Let's look at who's involved in the stuff in America. That would be Alexei Chalupa and Dmitry Alperovitch, both of whom are on the Atlantic Council. Both of them were the inside agents for the supposed hacking of Russians on the DNC. Now, I want to just point something out. Now, I've said this many times before. You can look it up on, you're going to correct me, Patriots for Truth. Go to the search box. Is that right?
Well, it depends on what you're looking up.
And put in Michael Alperovitch.
Oh, you can do that at aimfortruth.org. I think that's where most of Alperovitch articles are. Okay,
Michael Alperovitch is Dmitry's dad. Dmitry was Obama's number one cyber warfare guy, both military and corporate, the entire time he was in office. Okay, Dmitry is completely crooked. He's the only one who ever looked at supposedly the DNC server, and this is what's under question. I like what Putin also said. He said, "Don't look at the content of the WikiLeaks breaches. If you look at the content, you see the clear collusion." And the collusion is not between Trump and Putin. And so had Trump used the word collusion when he said that he chose to, after his intelligence, Dan Coats and his intelligence community, National Security Council, showed him what evidence they had, he still hasn't seen any evidence.
And by the way, that article is Russian Hackers Found, and I will have a link to that inside the description box link.
Mm-hmm. And so then he says, well, so as far as I can tell, I would have to more or less agree with Mr. Putin that there's no evidence. And had Trump gone into it like Putin went into it, the Concord Catering evidence, Putin said it'll be decided in the court. Right now, Concord Catering's lawyers are beating the snot out of America through the Mueller special counsel indictments against them and the 12 Russians that were the Russians that couldn't be found in the first set of indictments against 12 Russians, and there was a set of indictments, 13.
Hey, look who just walked in.
Oh, good.
Hello there.
Hi,
Hey,
Michael.
Michael.
Hi,
Good to
guys.
see you.
Welcome.
Did you try out one of those Mar-a-Lago turkey burgers I have out there?
Oh, no, I haven't tried
Oh,
it
you
yet.
got to try
You-
those. They're great.
How many pieces of cheesecake did you have? Tell us all here right now
I'm
before
not
the
gonna
world.
admit
No, he's just
Not going to
a
admit
coffee
it. You're
drinker.
smart.
I love cheesecake.
And how many cups of cappuccino coffee, or
This is my first cup.
first cup?
Yes.
We'll get warmed
Okay.
up, because I'm really upset, because what we've been seeing is the thing that we have been talking about for so long. We have been revealing the very things that Putin and Trump talked about there at the podium, because the stupid MSM, mainstream media, kept asking only stupid questions about Russian meddling. I like the question, Mr. Putin, do you have dirt on Trump? Was he supposed to say, yes, I do, I have it right here. Here in this folder, let me give it to you. It's called the Christopher Steele Dossier. Let's remember, if there's going to be any facts, if there's going to be any evidence, let's just look back at the evidence. The evidence was Comey presented out of the 36 pages of the Steele Dossier, which was formulated with Ukrainians, Russians, Britons, and other spies. Stefan Halpern and all those guys. Okay, what was in that dossier? If that's the evidence, and someone read that and thought that was evidence, you're just stupid. Please, I beg all of you, read the dossier. This is what got the FISA court warrant on Carter Page. This is why they had complete surveillance of the Trump team, and they ran a counterintelligence operation against him, not an investigation. Even the Mueller special counsel investigation has no crime. There's no crime stated in the intent of the investigation.
Okay, that's all great because our audience knows that. Let's talk about the fake news people going crazy. Did you see any of the audios, Michael?
Well, I listened to quite a bit coming up.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind how much unison there was, total negativity. I was so thrilled to see our leaders sitting down and talking. I totally agree with what Trump said about, hey, we've got to, I forget his phrase, but it was classic. I choose peace basically over politics. And man, you want a leader that does that. You don't want a leader that's out there shaking the weapons at every turn and feeding all their buddies in the deep state. No, we don't want that anymore. I don't know, Mr. Putin, totally different person. He emerged at one of the most turbulent times in Russian history, and that history goes back thousands of years. So, I don't know what I don't know about how things are going in this Russia. I keep wanting to say Soviet Union because he still reminds me of those days. And everybody's had to live through that. They've all had to live through all that karma. And so I'm not going to judge that totally, although I do know a few things about it. And he may have frisked me at the Leningrad airport years ago. But besides
In
that,
a professional way.
in a back room. Yeah, really.
So you've had more relations with Putin than Trump.
No, I don't know if it was him, but if it wasn't him, it was one of the people that worked for him. That we do know. Anyway, this whole nonsense that you're going to discourage peace talks among leaders of the two most powerful countries in the world is beyond belief. And we're seeing it coming from all of these leaders, the Democratic Party, the Rhino Republicans. It's really telling who's coming out in unison against this whole effort to find peace and stop war.
Everyone is beautiful. One newscaster said, it was so awful. The next thing, I guess he was just going to put on his jammies and climb under the covers with Putin.
Well, I don't know what they were watching because I was watching two professional people who were speaking very calmly, very seriously about a serious situation in the world. I mean, why wouldn't we want that?
Well, I wanted to also say it's really been good to see that so many people now are picking up on this whole election rigging system.
Yes, it
that,
is.
that we have all brought forward.
Right.
What's next? What happens next with this?
Well, we've got a group of people that are working on an article about Lord Mark Malloch Brown, because he appears to be one of the people that's driving this ability to bend elections worldwide. And they've been at it in the U.S. for a lot longer than we thought. And now it's coming out, all the information is starting to come out about all these election machines and specifically what modules in these machines can be hacked. And so that's coming out now. And hopefully our secretaries of state are just all going to step up in unison and go back to paper ballots and color our fingers purple. So
I don't
we can't
mind.
at least,
And I don't care if
mind
it
at all.
takes a month to vote.
Exactly.
To count the votes.
And the beautiful chart that you and the researchers did, that Roger Stone has been pushing all over the place, is everywhere, not just on InfoWars. But
That's exciting.
I see it coming up everywhere. And
Well,
now I see
what-
mainstream media even talking about and naming Smartmatic and Optech. They couldn't know
Right.
about Optech without your research.
Yeah, Optech. But what real American of any party, I don't care whether it's left or right, can be against having a bipartisan chain of custody for our vote all the way up to it being published in the state election system? Who can be against that?
I'd like to answer that.
Oh, okay.
The far left that is so insane that they want open borders and think that these children that came to the border weren't trafficked and raped before they got there. They've now done studies. 85 to 95% of any female that comes to the border, southern border, trying to get in for asylum has been raped.
Boy, that's sad.
We are supporting human trafficking with that kind of thinking. So the thinking, as Trump said, basically, he could be given Moscow and St. Petersburg, and the mainstream media would still complain about it. Well, he was basically given an overture for world peace and the end of the counterintelligence conspiracy against him that has embroiled Russia until the point that the sanctions put on by Obama, that would be politically incorrect for Trump to lift, have really crippled the relationship between Russia and America, which in fact could heal, and there would be no Cold War. The Cold War could simply end, and they don't want that. And I love what he did. He said to Mueller, "Come on over. What's wrong? Don't you know that there's a you're who you are, and you don't know there's a treaty, an agreement that we can have cooperative interchange with legal issues?"
It's a trick to take him away to Siberia and put him in a gulag.
Remember, he already knows Putin. He delivered the yellow cake uranium for Hillary Clinton with the Uranium One deal, which was being guarded by Andrew McCabe for 10 years.
So I have a question for you, Douglas. Why was it Mueller, of all the people in the world that could have delivered that uranium sample to Moscow airport, why wasn't Mueller on an FBI plane? What was the purpose of that? They could have sent it through FedEx.
No, it had to be Mueller, because there was a deal going down, and once this was tested, when he left, the deal was done, and Hillary got $145 million through Uranium One board members and other board members connected to Uranium One, and Bill got $200 million for Frank Giustra into the Clinton Giustra.
He got his $500,000 speaking fee in Moscow for an hour speech.
Yes, and so it was a done deal.
I'd love to have that gig.
Mueller did the deal for Hillary. It was done there, and he broke every single international law concerning enriched uranium crossing borders, and it had to be him. And if you know the story, you know that he hemmed and hawed. That was because the deal was still being wrangled with how much Hillary would get and how much, and Putin wanted to know that the Uranium One he was buying, the uranium.
Yes, but anybody could have brought that sample over. Why was it specifically, I'm asking specifically, why was it Mueller that had to be the one to deliver it? That's always baffled me.
He's not the step and fetch it boy. He was doing the deal. He was
cutting the deal?
He was cutting the deal, finishing the deal for Hillary. After that, she immediately her and Bill got paid $345 million almost instantaneously upon Uranium One's passing CFIUS, which that was the second time, because before that, Eurasia sold it to arms. We looked at that, and it went through CFIUS because it was our neighbor, Canada. Why is Canada buying more uranium from Kazakhstan? That's just stupid. So why would we allow Frank Juster to do that? Why would we allow him to sell it to Rosatom, which is Putin, when Putin has all the uranium that he wants, because it was Oak Ridge uranium enrichment plant used here in America to enrich that uranium, and then they snuck it out through the port over to Windsor in Canada, and then gave it to our enemies. They have plenty of uranium.
What's your thought here? The reaction yesterday was so uniformly negative about Trump speaking with Putin, but you're saying, and I happen to concur, that Putin was actually working for Hillary and Podesta and all those people back then. What's the freak out? Is it because all of a sudden one of their bunk buddies is turning and jumping to Trump's side? Is that what they're worried about?
Yes, but also what happened yesterday just decided the fate of the 2018 and 2020 election. Because now that he has exploded it and it's been laid out on the table, you would have to be one of those people you're talking about that could believe in World War III instead of peace, to not say that what really went down was a challenge to Robert Mueller. If you are in any way ethical, come on over and interview these people you say that you've indicted.
Right, that was beautiful.
And we're going. And by the way, can you help us go after Bill Browder? Now, what is Bill Browder, and why did he mention George Soros in the same breath with Bill Browder being an American and Bill Browder being a Brit? Did anybody? A few people got what he was really saying there. Right. First, what he was saying was $400 million came to Hillary's account for which would be, of course, a fraudulent election campaign financing, which we know happened a lot. But now we're talking $400 million. Well, that's a significant amount of money. No, not really. The DNC server...
Not for these people.
No,
they're moving trillions.
George Soros gave $2 billion to Hillary Clinton during the election, and Bill Browder's money was probably part of that $2 billion. It all went into the Democratic National Committee server. That's the reason Putin keeps mentioning the server and saying, look at the content that was taken from that. And then you'll see, as we have pointed out again and again, in December 2015, they said, oops, we did an analysis, and Uranium One will take Hillary down. She will not get elected because of it. And oops, 2 days ago we had a breach. We had a breach from both sides of our server, the part that handled the election and the part that handled the financing, with Seth Rich just happened to have access to both at that time.
Douglas, can I interrupt you there? Because one of the things that maybe non-technical people don't realize is the idea of whoops, we had a breach is so stupid. So stupid. Anybody that's trying to secure their systems is not going to go, oops, we had a breach. It's not the way breaches occur on systems that are really being secured. And this whole idea that, oh, I'm sorry, well, okay, we lost all of our data. Isn't that too bad? It's obvious to anybody in technology that they were being allowed to have access to those servers. It wasn't an accident. They were allowed in. They probably had the keys. And that's probably what they want to hide in the logs, is the fact that these people just logged in just like they were doing with the Awan brothers and Hillary's server and everything else. They were selling it to the highest bidder, and likely Putin and all his people know that.
And why wouldn't they buy it, right? I mean, it's being offered to you.
Yeah, that's what they do for a business.
Now, and I know you want to give an answer, but can we tie this into my questions about what's going on with Dan Coates and this intelligence stuff?
That's where I was going next.
Okay, well, just want to make sure.
Excuse me. As we told you before, we do not know and haven't seen the evidence that Dan Coates has done what Trump gave him as a task to have done by the end of January, which is guarantee to the President of the United States of America that no American is being surveilled. Now, as we told you recently and keep telling you, Trump can see on the news, every American is being surveilled. You're also having subliminal programming in every single thing you're watching. If it's for influence, or if they want you to buy something or think something, even if your phone is turned off, it is still emitting subliminal messages.
It's even worse than that. The newer TVs, the screen itself is actually the camera.
So Dan Coates, he came back and, what was his report? We suggested to you at that time that Trump then went to 2 different agencies because he found out that the entire 15 of the 17 agencies had been compromised. And so we're not going to tell you about all of that, but we told you that he works for the United States Office of Intelligence Analysis and U.S. Marshals. And that's because that's in the news. You see it happening all the time. You have no idea who he's put sanctions on. I would tell you, he has put sanctions on people in our own Senate and our own Congress. He has put sanctions on people that you can't even imagine. And so what is really going on there? It's the end of the intelligence community's control. So Dan Coates didn't do his job. So Trump is now having to do it behind the scenes. That's why he said my intelligence. He didn't say the intelligence community. He didn't say the 17 agencies of the intelligence. He said my, M-Y intelligence. And that comes down to, we know where he gets his intelligence.
But yesterday, in yesterday's audio, you talked about where this intelligence group could be. And then this morning, after you had done some research, you said, I think I might have to change my tune on that. Explain.
Okay. Recently, Dan Coates made himself to be a complete stupid idiot who I have no confidence that he can cross a street on his own. He went along with this stupid Clapper intelligence report stating that the Russians meddled in the election through Russia Today and Sputnik, and through a 2-sentence statement that the Democratic National Committee server was hacked by Russians. Now, he didn't even put in that report, Clapper, the evidence, the false evidence that Dmitry Alperovitch always brings out and says these are the attributes of the footprints of the people who hacked, which was nonsense. And then, as some people have noticed, he didn't stop any more hacking because the hacking continued. And by the way, he entered that computer in December.
Of what year?
2015. He was part of the whole plan to create the Russian story, to push back onto the Republicans, especially they feared Trump, and to get this story away from her Uranium One deal and the fact that was the most vulnerable part that was going to take her down and not let her be elected. And so they created basically interference. And they always do the same thing. They turn the story around, blame it on the other person to hide their own. But we've seen all of this. We read the WikiLeaks. Listen to what we've told you. We told you the whole thing. Go back to the 28 treasonous crimes of Comey. That will spell it out for you. And you'll find that everything we predicted back then, however long ago that was, Betsy, has come true and was true. And those are the very people they now focus on. And we told you from the beginning what would happen. So we didn't know the second thing would happen, though we assumed that they would blame it upon Russia and GRU, which they did, the hacking of the Democratic National Committee server. But really, that isn't who did it. Those were footprints left by Dmitry Alperovitch. And so now,
when you say footprints, you just mean the false planting of code that makes it look like a Russian keyboard entered the data versus somebody else. But
Correct.
We already know from the WikiLeaks that can be faked. You can make it look like it came from anybody.
And there's actually now 4 versions. There's 4.0 of leaving attribute footprints when you hack from Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia.
Look, it's that simple. It's nothing more than typing some words on a screen that make it look like, even if the Russians aren't using a Cyrillic keyboard, they can do it in English, they can do it in any language and make it look like somebody else's language.
Oh.
I mean, the guys in Moscow are brilliant at this kind of stuff.
Any good
They've
hacker,
been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Any good hacker doesn't leave footprints.
No.
That's stupid.
No, the good guys would never do that. They would never make that kind of stupid mistake.
Listen to this coincidence, and this is the big thing I think you want me to get to. Dmitry's father, Michael, controls all the cryptological keys that he took, in my opinion, from Russian nuclear cryptological keys. He changed them a bit. He came into America, and in a matter of a dozen years, he held all of the highest cryptological positions you can have in government and in the military and in satellites and everywhere else. So every single cryptological key is controlled by one Russian who was a Russian spy. He never was a nuclear scientist. I searched him out. He didn't even go to the college he went to. He didn't even know the city that college was in.
Was he a mathematician?
He was a
Physicist?
mathematician.
Oh, okay.
And so his son and he came in. He met a CIA agent in Canada, and the next year they brought him in, and he defected with his son. His son then became the biggest Russian hacker in America. He was arrested for it and became Comey's #1 agent to go against hackers. And his #1 thing is leaving false attributes, okay? This is who they hired, CrowdStrike, and Sean Henry, who was the head of the cyber division of the FBI, I believe. They hire these crooked people to come up with crooked attributes. No one ever looked at the server. If they looked at the server, they would find out Bill Browder's donation of $400 million and the other probably $1.5 billion given by Soros, because $2 billion was given to that to the DNC because Soros came out and bragged about it. Okay? Others bragged about it, and it's in the WikiLeaks. So that's the reason they'll never be released. But who had access to that? Imran Awan had access to it, and then later Dmitry Alperovich. Not only the DNC, but then later Dmitry Alperovich was forced by Pelosi on everyone in the DCCC, the Democratic Committee Caucus for whatever, the Democratic Caucus of the House of the Congress, Democratic Congressional Caucus Committee, and there's 40 some members. 44 of them allowed and signed off of not even asking that Imran Awan, who became their new tech guy, who had all their passwords, he didn't have a security clearance. They had to sign a waiver. 44 Congress people signed a waiver for Imran Awan to get in, and then later she forced Dmitry Alperovich and his Falcon, it's a proprietary spyware. It doesn't stop hackers, and he admitted it never stopped the hackers.
Can I stop you there? The fact that they allowed the unvetted Pakistani, the Awan brothers, to run that server is an indication to anybody in technology that they weren't even paying any attention at all to security. So therefore, whatever was going on that machine was fair game. They knew it was fair game, and that was the plan. It had to be that way, because even somebody in his first year of computer security school is going to do a better job than they did.
Well, like I always say, it was made accessible for the right price. They would point you to the right password, and everyone in the world knows our secrets except Americans.
Right. It would probably not have been a password, but have been a port that would be a special port that if you knew where the number on that port and you had a user ID and password, you could get in.
Xavier Becerra had it in his office. And then when he left, that office was empty and it sat there. The Capitol Hill Police said it was there. The FBI said it was there. And then it came up missing.
Well, when we say server, we're not talking about a lot of equipment, even for a lot of data. We're talking about a box you could put under your arm.
We have pictures of it.
And okay,
and the IT people who hated
set it up on a desk. You could plug an Ethernet cable into it, and there's the server for the whole world to come and get. Now, this is the question that William Binney keeps asking, and nobody will give him the data to check. If that's the server where all this data is supposed to have come in and out of, that server will show whether it was taken out through some sort of media device like a USB port, a USB drive, or maybe a hard drive that you plug into the computer, or it went out through the internet to another part of the world. If it did, that information will be on that machine unless it was hacked and cleaned off.
It was on Dimitri's report. And so you have all these experts looked at that, and they said the speed of the information demonstrated that it had to be a breach with somebody who had a password.
Like a USB
it could not
port.
have been hacked, period. It had to be a USB or whatever, some memory
the
device.
password's not the key there. It's what kind of memory device was used and whether it was, what port was used, whether it was on the machine itself or whether it went out through the connection through the internet, which is HTTPS, which everybody sees. And that goes out in packets. And each of those packets contains information about the origin and destination of that particular packet. Nobody is showing any expert any of that data.
No.
And that's telling that they're hiding it.
Not only that, but the data that was shown proved that it was a breach and not a hack. And not only that, it was Podesta's emails and Hillary's emails. Okay, wait, hold on. Those weren't on the DNC server.
He was on Gmail.
So where did those come from? Oh, only one person had access to Podesta, Hillary, the DNC server, Hillary's server, the 44 people in the Congress who were then shifting it all through one server in Bersea's office, which then went to another server in the basement of Imran Awan's cousin. It was actually Imran Awan's house, but his cousin, who part-time worked at McDonald's, was the only one doing any work, and he did it from that remote position, and then that went to Pakistan. Yeah. And it was sold to everybody on the way, because, as you say, anybody who had the password had access.
There's no work to do. You stick the machine in the basement, you run a computer cord to it, and you make sure the power's on.
Oh, I mean,
that's it.
There were 5 Imrans. Imran's gang had 5 people in Congress. One of them was his wife. They didn't show up to work, and they made as much as a congressman. And they had, I forget how many, 2,700 security violations where Imran signed on for them. And then when Imran signed over to his cousin to do this work, that was a security violation. Imran didn't do any work.
We need every name of every congressperson who allowed that to happen, because those people need to go right to jail.
Trump calls this the Pakistani mystery man, and it was
they let this happen.
It was Rahm Emanuel who came in and saved him, and his father in Pakistan. This is well known. Debbie Wasserman Schultz intervened again and again, and no one knows where this server went or the one that was in the basement.
Where is the responsibility for the person who has the responsibility for their data? That's the congressperson. That congressperson ultimately is responsible for their own security. This blaming of this Pakistani guy, okay, fine, I get it. You want to find a scapegoat. But the fact is, each one of those people is individually responsible for the security of their data because they work for us.
And if we don't do something about it, then it means that security in Washington is really a non-issue.
They're going to throw their hands up every time. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, geez. The guy came in and he just did some stuff. I don't know what he did. That is so... These aren't leaders that do this.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz pulled the race card and said that there's no need, just because they're Pakistanis and they came over on a lottery system, there's no need to check their background. That means they're SES, and they were probably trained through the Clinton SEI.
There's a lot of good Pakistani IT guys. It's not about their race or their ethnicity. It's about what they were doing and when they did it, and are they responsible for their own conduct. Well, yeah, the Awans are responsible for their conduct, but so are the senators and congressmen. I guess it's all Congress people. They're responsible for their own data in the end, and they are the ones that should be held responsible, and stop all the scapegoating.
Now, the other two things are DC leaks and Guccifer 2.0 that are part of this. Guccifer 2.0, as we said from the beginning, wasn't even someone buying the information from Imran. It was actually a very bad CIA operation. And the reason we know that is because they went onto the internet, got things, and made fake documents and made it look like these were part of the WikiLeaks breach, which they weren't. Compare them. They're different. So we always told you Guccifer 2.0 would eventually be said to be a Russian. And they confused the fact that Guccifer 1.0 was Romanian. Well, in the dossier, they refer to Russian hackers and those Romanian hackers. So that's why they at first said Guccifer 2.0 was another Romanian because of the Steele dossier. And now they say he's Russian, which is they changed their tune altogether. Then they said that the DC leaks prove that this was Russians there too. No, that was stuff directly from Imran. So you have to separate those two things out.
Well, I want to know, was the information accurate? And I've never heard anyone say that it was not accurate. And therefore, however we got it, which seems to be the witch hunt, the diversion, the fact is nobody has said that data is not true. We're not focused on the right subject. Who was it said that? Trump or Putin? One of them said that yesterday.
He insinuated. He says it's not the server. It's what was on the server.
Exactly.
And then he brought up Bill Browder and his $400 million to Hillary, and brought up George Soros all in the same breath.
And remind me again, where did that $400 million come from?
that was stolen from Russia through the Hermitage Capital Management by Bill Browder. He was an American when he made that money, when he did all those deals. You know, when the big bankers go over, they make deals, they get 27% of the deal.
Big bankers.
Brokers. And then, crooks. And then he didn't pay taxes, so he dropped his American citizenship, became a Briton, UK British, and so then he became one of those Russian oligarchs. He took the 1.5 billion out of Putin's Russia, which you don't do, especially if you're an American who just turned Brit. So Putin hates this man. And the Magnitsky Act is because Magnitsky was his crooked accountant in Russia. So Putin always does this. He grabs the oligarchs, throws them in prison, tortures them, gets the numbers where the offshore money is, and then he goes after them. And where are they always? Two places. London and New York.
London, yeah.
Always. And usually London. And then he goes after them. He's going after Bill Browder. So he says, reciprocal. Send Mueller over. I'll give him whatever he wants. And please give us the information on Bill Browder that we'd like so that we can, in fact... he's already been convicted in a Russian court, and he needs to be, of course, he needs to be taken back to Russia so he can be prosecuted, but he's being protected in London.
The interesting thing is that what Putin suggested is a law, a treaty on the books, as opposed to the special counsel provision that is being used as the justification for the special counsel within the Department of Justice. That's a much lower level of authorization than what Putin suggested, so therefore they ought to move to that immediately.
So what we're seeing here is the attempt at a regime change in America, a Soros color revolution, a coup d'etat, the Crossfire Hurricane counterintelligence operation turned into the Mueller investigation, which is an attempted coup, is now being foiled by our supposed enemy, Russia. Because why? We told you from the beginning that when they came out with, the 12 Russians, at first it was the 13 Russians and the 3 companies. You find out 2 of those companies don't exist. They didn't even exist in the years that he charged them and indicted them for. One of the companies did, and they had nothing to do with those people. And everybody says that. So he had to hide that. So then he came out with the fake reports, which he got all of, if any member on Trump's cabinet did not say that the Senate intelligence investigation into Russian meddling was correct, that would have caused sheer hell. So Christopher Wray, Pompeo, Coates, all of them said, oh no, that report's correct. RT and Sputnik are evil and they meddled, but really they didn't change a single vote. But when that happened, what he also said, and this is the key factor I've been trying to build up to, the reason Coates said our infrastructure is completely vulnerable is because they're all built upon the crypto codes of Michael Alperovitch. I've been warning people about this since we first heard.
And by the way, they don't have to be. They are that way because whoever's making those decisions wants them to be that way. It's just engineering. It's just software code. It can be fixed.
And that's a great place to end this audio and pick it up for a whole new look.
So we get dessert?
Yes.